4 minutes in, let's kickstart the webinar with Georgios, how to perform an SEO content audit for your blog. Georgios here is the managing director of MINUTTIA, content and SEO agency that helps SaaS and tech companies drive organic growth. Georgios has been mentioned in or written for sites and publications like Founder, G2, OpenView, CoSchedule, and tons more. In his free time, he reads psychology, tries to understand the why behind human behavior, which is what I believe makes him actually one of the best growth marketers out there. He's always constantly thinking, okay, why is the user supposed to care about X or Y or this specific topic? We're more than honored to have him here. Show's all yours, Georgios.
Thank you very much for the intro and the kind words, Bernard. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here with us today. And because we have limited time, let's get right into the very interesting things that we will be discussing today. Just let me know if you can see my screen once I get into. Okay. Okay, that's great. Before we start, let me just say that in some parts of the presentation, things will get a bit more technical. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we will cover them as we, move along or towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started with a quick agenda of what we are going to cover today. We are going to cover what's a content audit, obviously, one of the fundamental questions around this topic. Why do you need to conduct a content audit? What is the process that we follow when we conduct content audits for our clients? What is the data that we are using in order to do so? What are the actions and how do we categorize these actions for each of the pages that we audit? How we prioritize these actions? What you need to pay attention to when you're conducting an audit, what you'll need, and then we will share a live example and a Q&A towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get right into it. First of all, what is a content audit? Doing a content audit means carrying out a review of the content pages of your website, evaluating them against specific metrics that we will see later that are important to you and your business, because every business is different, and depending on your industry, your situation, your stage, and so on and so forth, different things matter to you. And making decisions that we call actions for what to do with each of these pages. Okay, so this is the what. Why do we need to do that? Why do we need to conduct a content audit in the first place? Well, we have three main reasons. The first one is because probably you have pages that underperform in terms of their organic search performance, and you need to find those pages and do whatever you can to fix them. The second reason is because you probably have pages with information and visuals, images, and so on that are outdated and need to be updated. And last but not least, you probably have pages that aren't up to date when it comes to where your product or service is right now. Okay, I want you to know that we are a content SEO agency. Okay, we are not involved in product marketing as much. So this means that the third reason is not as important to us when we are conducting content audits. As a matter of fact, I would say that we evaluate and judge pages solely based on business and SEO related metrics. Okay, now why are the above points important? The first one is important because the pages that underperform on your website essentially don't let, obviously based on depending on the scale of the problem, don't let your website breathe and can possibly affect your overall performance. In other words, it gives a negative signal as to your content in general. Okay, the second point, because by not providing factual and up-to-date information, you can be considered as a trusted resource. And I would say here, not only for human beings, but also for Google, okay, and other search engines for that matter, because rest assured that as things when it comes to NLP and the way Google and other search engines for that matter are able to understand the context and the information inside a page, they are capable of understanding whether or not your content is factual and the information that you include in there is actually up to date. And last but not least, when it comes to product related reasons, by not updating your product focus pages, you fail, or service based on what your business is all about, you fail to show how your product has evolved over time. Okay, so all in all, I would say that conducting content audits is extremely important. Okay, of course, the when you will conduct content audits depends on many different things, such as your publishing frequency, how often you publish content, or the industry you are in, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's get into the next. Sorry about that. Yeah, here we have a very prominent example from our own blog of a page that's underperforming and at the same time is outdated. This is a guide on how to use Clearscope. Okay, we published it back in May 2020, and back then it was a very nice piece of content, and this is why it performed well. As a matter of fact, it was ranking somewhere in the top results in the first page of Google. Okay, but the truth is that Clearscope, from the time that we published this piece of content, has evolved. Okay, and the SERPs have changed. The way things were when we first published that page are not the same nowadays. So I would say that gradually we have started noticing a decline in performance, and it makes sense. Okay, this is a classic example of a page that if we were conducting a content audit on our blog, would definitely trigger several actions, and we would have to update it. Okay, now let's get into the process where things start to get interesting. What is the process that we are following, and you should be following when you're conducting a content audit for your blog? First of all, you need to categorize your content inventory, aka the pages that you have that are submitted to your XML sitemap, based on the scope behind each piece of content, and to audit only the pages with SEO as the main scope behind them. Okay, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are a content SEO agency, so we are mainly focused on pages that have SEO as the main scope behind them. Okay, so this is why we make this categorization and make sure to make a list of only the pages that we will be including in the audit. Second, for the pages that have SEO as the main scope, we assign a target keyword to each page. This process is also called keyword mapping, so that we know, what term we need to optimize for. Okay, and this is extremely important. And last but not least, we gather the main and supplementary data, more information on that later, conduct a manual review, and come up with very specific actions, both on a page level, but also on a blog level, because in some cases, we may identify opportunities for optimization for the blog as a whole. For example, when it comes to navigation on the main blog page, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are the three steps that we are following in our content audit process. Now, I know that here you may have some questions. These are questions that we get asked by our clients, and I would like to answer them before they come in. Something extremely important to keep in mind, guys, is that not every page should have a target keyword. Okay, a website must have other content apart from the content that has SEO as the main scope behind it. In other words, don't try to find a target keyword for each of the pages that you have on your website or for each of the pages that you're auditing. It's okay if a page doesn't have a target keyword. Okay, in many cases, the second point, the keyword you used when you first created a page isn't the main keyword that Google associates with that page. Google works with associations, okay? And in many cases, we have noticed that Google may associate a page with a different term as the prominent term for that page from the one that we initially targeted. In those cases, you may have to consider repurposing the page to target another keyword. And last but not least, even though there are ways to semi-automate the content audit process, I would say that there aren't really any shortcuts, okay? You need to do the hard job of manually auditing your content pages. Let's get into the data that we are using, where things are getting even more interesting. At MINUTTIA, when we are conducting content audits for our clients, we categorize essentially data into the following two categories. We have main data and we have supplementary data. Main data allow us to understand what's normal for that website and assign each page with an action that's automatically assigned. Okay, we will see how that works when we will get to the live example we have prepared for you. And supplementary data essentially gives us the full picture and allow us, when we are conducting the manual review, to make final decisions as to what will we do with this page. Okay, now main data. What are the main data that we are using? We have 4 data points here: conversions or any kind of action with monetary value, such as signups according to Google Analytics, or any other action with monetary value that is important to you and your business based on your business model. Then we are taking into account the number of sessions coming from organic search in the last 12 months according to Google Analytics, the number of keywords for each of the pages included in the audit using a search data provider such as Ahrefs, the number of referring domains, not backlinks, but referring domains for each of the pages included in the audit using a search data provider such as Ahrefs. Okay, and let's see the supplementary data that we are using to get the full picture over the performance of each of the pages that we are auditing. First of all, we have the number of internal links for each of the pages included in the audit according to Google Search Console. And this is important because let's say that one of the recommended actions for one of the pages included in your audit is to redirect the page to another page. Okay, merge it with another page and apply a 301 redirect. In that case, it would be highly recommended to also update all the internal links back to that page so that they point to the new redirected page. Okay, so when we are auditing pages and we see, for example, that the page has, I don't know, 152 internal links, then we may give it a second thought if we want to redirect that page. Okay, we take into account the date that the page was last modified or updated according to the XML sitemap, if it can give us this piece of information, or our CMS. Then we take into account 3 very important things, which are the organic traffic performance, the organic keywords performance, and the referring domains performance. And we actually manually reviewing each page and see whether or not each of these 3 metrics is essentially growing, declining, or has reached a plateau. And last but not least, we take into account assisted conversions with a time window of 30 days according to Google Analytics. Okay. One thing that I'd like to mention here is the fact that assisted conversions have really changed the way we are auditing content, because in many cases we have noticed that there are pages which may not generate conversions themselves, but maybe they are kind of an entry point for people to come to our website and take an action after a few days. Okay, so those pages are extremely important, and they fundamentally change the way we are doing things, because we used to take into account only conversions, and that was wrong, because we also need to know in many cases where people start their journey on our website. Okay, and the second thing that I'd like to mention here, which is also extremely important, is the fact that when it comes to the data that you are using for a content audit, regardless of what data you're using, you have to keep in mind that even if your data provider is Google Analytics, Google Search Console, whatever, there will always be some discrepancies. Okay, do not expect to get absolute numbers when it comes to the number of organic keywords that your website is ranking for, the number of organic sessions, assisted conversions, and so on and so forth. So there will be some discrepancies, but we are just trying to do the best that we can. Some FAQs here.
Just a second, we have a couple questions that I think are relevant to the previous slide that you had. Laura is asking, is it important to change the publishing or update date when content is updated? I guess it's important if content is old, but if content is written in 2020 and you made some updates in 2021, should you change the publishing or updates date when content is updated?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Laura. I think that this whole thing with the date to work as a quote unquote hack started with a blog post that was published on a popular SaaS blog. I would say that freshness in some cases for some queries is important, okay? Thus, if you're creating a piece of content today and you're updating it in 6 months from today, obviously it's good that the updating date is, accurate. But I would say that all in all, I wouldn't recommend going to your CMS, for example, and changing the dates manually without applying changes on the actual content. Don't know if that answers your question or you had something else in mind, but I would say that once again, freshness, content freshness is important, but I would say that we have to examine things on a query level, and at the same time, when you are updating your content, it's good to have like your update date to resonate with the updates that the actual updates that you performed on the content.
Yeah, absolutely. To add on to your point, I've tested this idea pretty intensely at like a previous job that I was doing. I basically wrote a script that went back at the first of every month. It would go back to the previous month and then randomly change the updated date to a legitimate date of the previous month without actually making any changes to the content. For a while, Google respected that hack, if you will. And then over time, they basically just started to ignore that updated at sort of thing that I was placing on the site. So my understanding about this is that you actually have to modify the content on your page somewhere between, I'd say like 10 to 20% of the body of the content needs to shift for Google to respect that the content has actually been updated, or else, I mean, I don't know if Google's like negatively dinging you if you're like just changing the updated at without changing the content. But I would assume that Google would look at that behavior and then like slightly frown. All right, one more question. Tara asks, what's the best way to find content you've published that's using outdated language about sensitive topics, especially if your brand is centered around using inclusive language? Maybe you're going to get into this when you're talking about your process, but just figured I'd throw that out there since these were the first two questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this question. I would say that, as I mentioned previously, unfortunately, obviously, I guess that there are ways to scale things, but especially when you're auditing content that may, includes information about sensitive topics or inclusion or whatever. Unfortunately, you may have to do it manually. Okay, I'm not sure if there are any shortcuts to do that at scale. And also, it also depends on the scale of how many pages we are talking about. Okay, if we are talking about 30 pages, then it's not a big deal. Okay, you can have someone like manually review and edit or update the content. But if we're talking about hundreds or even thousands of pages, then you may have to consider a more scalable solution, even though, to be honest with you, I'm not aware of any solutions that do that at scale.
Yes, so I guess there's a comment from somebody in the audience that says, Jamie says, you may be able to use site : web, like domain, and then topic. And I think that that's actually an interesting idea to figure out this like across your entire content inventory. Let's say you use the word guys, for example, right? You could do a site : MINUTTIA.com or whichever domain that you're trying to audit. And I think you can do like quotation mark guys, and they would actually go through and scan everything on your site that mentioned guys. And then you could go and like, change all of that. So I think that's a great comment, Jamie.
Okay, yeah, I think I got the question in the wrong way. Yeah, definitely that's a way to do that. And also we are using like crawlers that allow us to do that at scale. But obviously, just doing using an advanced search operator in Google, yeah, can definitely do the work. I didn't understand the question at first, so yeah.
You're good.
Okay, are we ready to continue?
Yeah, there's another one, but I think you'll probably get around to answering it. And if not, I'll call it out when the right section comes up.
Okay, that's great. Let's continue with some FAQs that we have when it comes to data that we get very often from our clients. Now, I would say that conversions are important, okay, and you have to take them into account when you are conducting a content audit. But they are not important just for the obvious reasons. You know, this is where they are close to where the money is, but also because they are connected to signals, positive signals that essentially tell search engines that, you know, the visitor who came on that website has found what they were looking for. And thus, you know, this is a positive signal. And I would say that conversions are extremely important and should be taken into account when you are performing content audits. It's extremely important that people who come on your website, who visit your content, find what they are looking for, okay, whatever that may be. Now, as we mentioned earlier, assist conversions are extremely important when it comes to auditing your website because, and as I mentioned, they completely change the way we are doing things because they allow you to identify pages that essentially help assist other pages generate conversions, okay? And this is not important only for the content audit that we are doing, but also it could help us on, you know, on a page level to try to build logical paths on, you know, those pages that generate conversions and essentially help the visitor move from one stage of their journey to the other. And last but not least, something that is important to keep in mind is that we discussed earlier referring domains. We take into account referring domains. Avoid using backlinks as one of your evaluation criteria and use just referring domains, okay? Referring domains give you a more clear view over the link equity that's passed on to a certain page. And that's it when it comes to data. Let's get into the actions. As I mentioned previously, we at MINUTTIA, when conducting content audits for our clients, we categorize actions in two categories. We have automatic actions, and we also have recommended actions. Automatic actions are assigned automatically through formulas that we run in the Google Sheet template that we are using based on very specific thresholds that we have set based on the main data that I shared with you earlier. And the recommended actions, because, you know, our template works great and we are very happy about it. But if our template says that this page needs to be deleted, it's not like we are going to delete this page without auditing it first. Okay, so we are going to perform a manual review to each of the pages and then come with very specific recommended actions for each of the pages included in our audit. Okay, now let's get a bit deeper into that. When it comes to our automatic actions, the automatic actions that we assign to each of the pages included in a content audit are delete 404, leave as is, redirect or merge, and manual review. Let's see the criteria for each of these automatic actions. When do we say that, you know, this page essentially needs to be deleted? As I mentioned previously, using formulas and having set thresholds for each of the pages, you know, based on what's considered normal for that website. We say that the page needs to be deleted when conversions are 0, the number of sessions are 0, the page has no organic visibility whatsoever in terms of the number of keywords that, you know, it ranks for, and it doesn't have any backlinks from any referring domains whatsoever. This is a page that, as you can imagine, contributes no value whatsoever to your website. Okay, so automatically our tool says that this page needs to be deleted. As I mentioned previously, still we are going to manually review that page in order to be sure that, yeah, this is the action that we should take here. Okay, then when do we say that a page needs to just, keep being there as it is because it performs great and we wouldn't want to do anything that would harm its performance. Well, as I mentioned previously, we are using thresholds, and bear with me, guys, because we will see how that looks like in our template so that you can get a better understanding. But based on the thresholds that we have set and based on what's considered normal for that website, we say that if for a particular page, conversions are above the threshold, sessions are above the threshold, keywords are above the threshold, and referring domains are above the threshold, please, leave that page as it is. Still, we are going to manually review that page because we may see that at the end of the day, this page performs great. Why don't we help it perform better, for example, by building some backlinks back to it, or by adding some internal links back to it, and so on and so forth, okay? Next, we have redirect or merge, which is a very interesting action. And essentially here, we take into account only the referring domains that the page has and the number of sessions. And we say that, look, if a page has backlinks from, obviously, practically, it doesn't have to be 0, but if it has backlinks from other websites and the number of sessions, aka the number of traffic that it receives, is 0 from organic search, then something might be wrong with that page, okay? So we may have to merge it with another page because it has link equity and it's weird that it doesn't perform, okay? And last but not least, we have manual review where our tool automatically says that every other page that hasn't fallen under any of the above 3 categories have to be manually reviewed. And when it comes to the recommended actions that we assign, this is how things look like in our Google Sheet template. Obviously, we will jump there in a couple of minutes, so please bear with me. But you can see here that we have several recommended actions, such as content update, or this page needs to be completely, we need to do a content rewrite, or we need to redirect it, or we need to leave it as it is, okay? And so on and so forth. And I wanted you to have those recommended actions so that you can use them the next time that you perform a content audit. So you will have access to this presentation. At this link, you can just make a copy of the 20 recommended actions that we use in general when we are conducting content audits, okay? Now, so far so good, but the question here could be, okay, but how do we prioritize all these things? Where can we get started? This is the way we are doing it. First, we handle all the pages that we need to delete, okay? These are pages that, as we mentioned earlier, they have no business value. They have no value in terms of SEO and maybe holding the performance of your website down as a whole. And most likely they don't have value in terms of product marketing as well. Then after doing that, we make sure to handle all the redirects, and we redirect and merge pages that have some value, for example, some backlinks that we want to preserve. But as we saw earlier, they have some value, but they cannot stand on their own, okay? It would be better if we merge those pages or redirect them to another better page. And last but not least, which is obviously the most time consuming, we start updating content based on opportunity, meaning based on content that already performs well and just needs a small push to perform better. And the reason for that is obviously we are going to see what pages have, the highest probability of performing even better after the update, and we prioritize those over others, okay? And some extremely important things to pay attention to, guys, when you are conducting content audits for your blogs. When adding a 301 redirect, you also have to remove the page from the XML sitemap because redirected pages cannot exist in the XML sitemap. When adding a 301 redirect, you also, at least that's our recommendation, have to change all the existing internal links so that they point to the new URL. The third point that we have, that we also mentioned earlier, that some of the pages that you need to update may have to be repurposed to target another term. 4, Always make sure to manually review every page before deleting it or redirecting it. This is something that I repeated multiple times throughout this presentation. You should always, always, always conduct a manual review. Obviously, take into account product marketing, business, and other factors when evaluating pages. Keep all data in one place so that you remember, this is the data that helped me make these decisions. And also what we do is that we say, keep a data snapshot. Essentially, this is when we extracted the data, okay, for each of the data sources that we are using. And our recommendation is that you can have a junior person inside your company handle the data input, and someone in a more senior position make the final decisions, okay? And last but not least, before we jump into the example that I have with you and do the Q&A, what you will need to perform all these interesting things that we've covered so far. First of all, we recommend that you use Google Sheets for content audits with less than 10,000 pages. And it's a great way, honestly, to have everything in one place and be able to get the full picture over the performance of a page and say, these are going to be the recommended actions for that page. You are obviously going to use and need some data providers such as Google Search Console and Google Analytics for conversion and traffic data. You can use a tool such as Ahrefs for keyword and backlink data. And last but not least, you can use Clearscope for essentially knowing after conducting the manual review exactly what pages you have to update and what you need to do in order to update them, okay? In terms of what terms you need to include inside the content, so on and so forth. And obviously, last but not least, you will also need a content reviewer and a content creator, okay? Someone has to manually review the pages that you have on your content inventory. And at the same time, someone has to handle the content updates as well, okay? That would be it for now. Do we have any questions before we go to the move forward with the example that I have?
No, not quite. I mean, yes, I'm still holding on to one that Daniel has asked, but you might cover it, you might not. We'll get around to it if it doesn't get covered.
Okay, that's great. So first of all, let me share with you, this is a list of recommended actions that, as I mentioned, you can have access to through the presentation. You can essentially make a copy of it and you can use it next time that you will be performing content audit for your website. And now I will be sharing with you how things look like when we are conducting a content audit, okay? Let me just say that obviously for privacy reasons, we have hidden all the columns with URLs and anything like that. And at the same time, in our templates, this is something that we are building for like over 2 years now. There are many things happening, okay? For the sake of simplicity, I will be sharing just 3 tabs, okay? Just to show you what we discussed earlier. So let's say that we have all the data that we need, okay? All the data that we described earlier, and we have gathered them all together in our Google Sheet. Now, as you can see here, for example, our tool essentially tells us that from the data that you have inserted, we can see that let's take performance first. We can see that when it comes to performance, organic traffic performance, organic keywords performance, and referring domains performance that we saw earlier, it seems that 11 pages are growing, 1 page is declining, and 22 pages has reached a plateau, okay? And the same applies to organic keywords and referring domains. This is great just to give us an overview of what's going on the website, okay? Because we can see here, for example, that as a matter of fact, in this content audit, with very few pages, by the way, most of the pages are growing when it comes to their organic performance, okay? This doesn't mean that there are no opportunities, but this is a great way to get an overview of how things are. Then, as you can see here, when it comes to the data overview, we can see what is the minimum for each of the data points that we have in our Google Sheet, what is the max, what is the median, and what is the average. Okay, so for example, we have that when it comes to referring domains, the average is 3.3. Okay, when it comes to keywords, it's almost 55. the question is, why is this important? Okay, why do we need to get averages and medians and all this complex stuff? This is important because this gives you a good idea of what's considered normal for your website. And thus you can set thresholds and essentially say that when something is above those thresholds, okay, it's good. We can leave that page as it is. When something is below these thresholds, then maybe this is a page that we need to update, okay, and so on and so forth. And we have other data here as well, such as, you know, title tags and meta descriptions and things like that. These are not included in this presentation, so I will skip them. And once we have the averages, what we do then is that we come here and we set the thresholds that we mentioned earlier based on what's considered normal for this website. So you can see here that we say essentially that a threshold for the number of keywords, since the average is 54.9, is 55, okay? Conversions 1, referring domains 3, organic traffic 9, and so on and so forth. And once we do that, then automatically our template will assign an automatic action, as we mentioned earlier, for each of the pages included in the audit, okay? And you can see here that we have that most of the pages here are essentially labeled with an automatic action as manual review. Essentially, we have to manually review that page. And this is like a quick overview for us of how this page is performing based on what's considered normal, based on the data that we have. And from there, we are going to essentially perform, you know, a manual review, and we are going to come with very specific recommended actions for each of the pages included in our content audit. So, for example, here you can see that for this page, we say that the recommended actions are content update and add backlinks. Here you can see that the recommended action is update URL slag and add backlinks. Here you can see the recommended action is content update, update title tag or meta description, and also update the URL slag. In other cases, we may have to add internal links and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is an overview of how we do that. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it took us a while to get things to that level, and it may seem a bit more complex than it actually is. But this way, we are sure that we are not missing anything, and that essentially, at the end of the day, we made the right decision for each of the pages that we have audited. Okay, that would be it. Let me stop sharing right now.
Very cool. Very cool. So where do you put in the data for that spreadsheet that you had? Is that something?
So we have different tabs for each of the, let's say, data points that we are using. We insert the data there, and then they are automatically, let's say, transferred into the actions tab. The automatic actions are automatically assigned, and then we know, what to do for each page. We start manually reviewing, and then take, make final actions for each of the pages.
Got it. Yeah. So Daniel's question, which you had like a little box in the spreadsheet, was, do you have a recommended workflow for identifying content decay and which content to prioritize? That's basically what I saw inside the spreadsheet. And it was like, oh, organic content traffic was increasing to this set of pages or something like that. Is there anything else that you're looking at in terms of like what pieces of content are decaying over time, or is that just more of like a manual review / like Google Analytics traffic is declining, Search Console position is going down?
There are some tools out there, and to be honest with you, we have tried some tools that kind of try to do that. We were not happy with them, so it works better for us, Daniel, to now go on and manually see every page in order to know exactly what's going on in terms of the organic keywords, the organic traffic, and the number of referring domains. Okay, and this gives you a very precise view of what's going on actually with this page. Now, To be honest with you, one of our next goals is to find a way to automatically grade, when I say grade through Clearscope, each of the pages included in the audit, so that we have this as a metric as well inside the Google Sheet. I don't know how we will do that, hopefully through an API, but this is one of our next goals for the content audit, which essentially will eliminate much of the hard work of manually reviewing each page.
Yeah. I mean, we just released content monitoring. I think an API for that data makes complete sense and is something that I'm going to be pitching internally in terms of our own product roadmap. So when you said the automatic actions using data, right, you have criteria for deleting pages, 404. I bring this up because some SEOs will argue that a 410 is a better way of removing a page from a site rather than a 404, because technically speaking, I guess 404 is like page is temporarily removed and 410 is like page is completely removed, don't come back to this. Do you have any opinions or thoughts around a 404 versus a 410?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for asking this question. I know this debate, and we kind of had it with a couple of clients in the past. The truth is that when we say essentially that this page has to be deleted, we never, or in very rare occasions, we like completely remove it. Okay, in most cases we will, because you never know. Even if your data provider, and this is one of the weaknesses of this whole process, even if your data provider says that there are no referring domains or backlinks back to this page, you never know. Okay, so you don't want to miss on anything. And so in most cases, what we do is that we will redirect this page to another page. We will unpublish it, for example, from the company's blog through the CMS, and then we will apply a 301 redirect to the blog or another relevant page. If a page is, I don't know, a page that you published in 2014 and adds no value whatsoever, and for some reason you don't want it to have even a redirect, then we will select 404 and not, I mean, there is no right or wrong here. You can do things however you like, and especially when it comes to content SEO, every person has their own opinion, and this is just the way we are doing things.
Totally, absolutely. Again, if anyone has any questions or whatever, Georgios here. He is one of the masters. Or else I'm just gonna keep peppering Georgios because you have some interesting stuff, right? So Google may associate the page with a different keyword over time, which means that you should likely consider repurposing that content. That would be, in my opinion, an indication of like search intent or topical relevance shift. So how do you know, right, that Google's associating a page with a different keyword over time? Is there specific things that you are looking for inside Google Search Console or during manual review that would be a red flag that's like, oh, wow, we may have designed this piece on target keyword, except it's ranking for, like search query topic that's like deviating away from target keyword. And then what's your take, right? Some people will say, oh, well, we'll just make it satisfy this new user intent. Or some people will say, okay, well, we need to create a separate piece of content to target this new intent. Like, how do you think about the association of different keywords over time?
Okay, so first of all, that's a great question. As you mentioned in one of the previous webinars here at Clearscope, keyword cannibalization is not so bad. Search intent cannibalization is, okay. So I would say that whatever we do, we wouldn't want to do something that's already out there, okay? We wouldn't want to have overlapping information or anything like that. The way we make decisions is heavily based on, where the product is right now, where they want to go, where the business is, and what their goals are, okay? So if, for example, we are talking about a social media marketing tool, and they have published a blog post around social media analytics, okay? and they are, we see that this page after 6 months is ranking for terms around social media metrics, okay? And they are launching a new feature around social media metrics, then chances are that we are going to focus there, okay? So I would say that we examine things on a case-by-case basis here, and this is not a case where you can make decisions at scale. Like you have to examine the page and also take other factors, as I mentioned, like business factors, product factors, or service if you're a service business, and so on, in order to make a well-informed decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now I have an interesting thought question that just came into my mind because we're talking about, okay, right, automatic actions, you have deleting, leaving pages, redirecting emerging pages. And then you also mentioned that, right, not every page on your website needs to have a target keyword. Again, we get that a lot. It's like, how do I optimize my about page using Clearscope or something? And we'd be like, you don't use Clearscope, you just write your about page as you would write your company's about page, right? That kind of stuff. Is there ever a world where you would recommend no index on pages that do not have SEO concerns?
No, that's a great question, and a very interesting topic. I had this question a few days ago from a client of ours, and my answer is, in the past, maybe I would say, because I was so obsessed, you know, let's have great results, and you know, like these pages that add no value when it comes to SEO. Nowadays, no. I believe that not every page on a website needs to have a target keyword. For example, we are working with SaaS and tech companies primarily, okay? So they regularly have product updates. Like, what's the point of trying to search for a keyword when you're about to announce a new feature that you have, okay? So I would say that in general, don't try to look for a target keyword for each page, and I wouldn't recommend a no index.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I could see how somebody could make the argument that if the page isn't for SEO, then no index it, or no follow the links to it to keep the link equity of the domain stronger. Again, that was just something I was peering through my notes, and I was like, I bet SEOs out there have probably sculpted a website to look like that, but I have not seen any conclusive evidence that would point to that being a good idea nor a bad idea. Probably more of a bad idea, because that doing something that strict is probably more prone to error. One last thing that I thought was very interesting was this idea of assisted conversion with a time window that you brought up, right? Something that you definitely have said is supplementary data, yet should almost qualify for main data. I actually have no idea how to do that inside Google Analytics. I was wondering if, I don't know, maybe for MINUTTIA.com, you could show the audience and myself how to set up a assisted conversion with time window sort of analysis.
The thing is that in order for this to work, you need to have conversion tracking enabled on your website. And at MINUTTIA, we don't have yet. I hope that we have in the new version of the website. What I want to say, though, about assisted conversions, and this is a great, thank you for bringing this up, is that with all the data that we are using, like sessions, like keywords, everything, always take it with a pinch of salt, especially when it comes to conversions, because you know that, for example, there are some restrictions, and if your users are browsing from Safari, essentially cookies are kind of deleted after 7 days. So you cannot use the 30-day time window in that case. Or, I would say that you also lose data when it comes to users coming to your website for the first time from one device, from their mobile, and taking an action with monetary value from another device, from their desktop. So always take this data with a pinch of salt. Yeah, sorry I cannot share, but unfortunately we don't have conversion tracking enabled at MINUTTIA.com.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I think like it completely makes sense to me. Like that's what you should check, right? It's like a case study page might get 0 conversion, 0 organic, 0 whatever. But if it's a high assisted conversion, then, or, you know, a page that helps with conversions to a large degree, obviously you should keep it. And so I just like go, yeah, that's something cool, but I've never personally implemented something like that myself.
I will tell you something. Well, once you brought that up, like when it comes to system conversions, we had a content audit a while back for a SaaS website, big website, and there were some pages, mostly list posts for a certain topic that were not, you know, based on based on the owner of the business. They don't have any value whatsoever. But what we saw, and they were very good traffic generators, by the way. But what we saw through the content audit is that those pages, yeah, they do not generate conversions, but they work kind of as an entry point for that website. Okay, so take assisted conversions into account.
Always. All right, one more thing that just came to my mind, right? When you've now come up with these recommended actions, right? Deleting your pages, redirecting pages, and then updating your content. What factors makes you prioritize a content update for a specific page?
Then what we take into account is, you know, conversions. If that page generates revenue for the business, we will definitely prioritize it higher compared to other pages. Its current position, if it's like in page 2, then all it needs in most cases is a little push to go to page 1, okay, and perform better. So once again, we will treat things on a case-by-case basis, and we will take into account the metrics that we have at our disposal, mostly at this stage, because this is time consuming, and obviously time equals money in most cases, but mostly business focused metrics such as conversions, assisted conversions, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay. When then do you recommend or go with a backlink building approach? Because, right, your spreadsheet might say, okay, this page is poor. And you'll be like, okay, well, let's delete it or maybe update the content. But when does it then be like, okay, maybe we need to build a link or two to either the domain or the page? You have any thoughts about how that flows in your process?
Definitely. Exactly, because we are conducting manual reviews. We take a look at the SERP and we see that, look, this page performs well, and it doesn't even have the amount of backlinks that the other pages have on that SERP. Okay, so there may be an opportunity here for this page, if it had, for example, some good backlinks, to perform even better. Okay, so this is what we essentially try to figure out, and exactly this. Exactly, because we do the manual review, we know how the SERP looks like, and we know that this page has managed somehow to perform well organically without having as much backlinks. So let's give it a push, not only to get, you know, a higher position, but also to maintain the position that it has, because we don't get as deep as checking their link velocity of the competitors, I mean, but which, by the way, is the pace at which other websites that we are competing with are acquiring backlinks. But just by taking a look at that and seeing a SERP where other websites have many links, this may, you know, indicate that this is an important page to them. So it may be an important page to us as well.
Ooh, we have a Q&A coming in from Jeff Perkins. He says, how far in advance should you optimize and republish content for a seasonal event? For example, Christmas, or you could think like maybe Black Friday, right? Like, how do you think about that stuff?
That's great. It's the time of the year that we get this question. I would say that there is no right answer. But if anything, let's say that we are discussing about Christmas now and the holiday season, and we want to capture some of that seasonality. Why don't you do it now? Okay, why don't you prepare yourself now? Just publish it or update it or whatever you have to do. It's better to do it now than, I guess, later.
All right, one more question from Anonymous. They ask, what's the difference between keyword and intent cannibalization?
Okay, that's great. I would say that a keyword can be, for example, presentation software, okay? And another keyword could be presentation tool, okay? Now, these are two different keywords that in some cases, you may have two different pages that for one of these keywords, both pages may have visibility for. But the thing is that this is, let's say, keyword cannibalization, okay? What's the problem is when not two different pages with two different intents. Let's say that the first page, or to put it better, let's say that the first page is a product page, okay? Like use case page or feature page, or call it however you like. And the other page is a list post, okay, with the best, let's say, presentation software. So these pages are kind of competing with each other. For me, as I see it, quite honestly, that's not a problem, because one of the pages is a list post, the other is a use case page, a feature page, okay? If we had two list posts, though, competing with two different, we have two different list posts competing for the terms, I don't know, for the same term, that would be a problem, because essentially that would mean that we have overlapping information on our website. Okay, we could cover the term through one post. We don't need two, but we need a feature page and a list post. Okay, hope that makes sense. I'm not sure, Bernard, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, it's a little nuanced, but usually the example I'll go with is something along the lines of, say you have a recipe for, let's say, Christmas cookies, right? Gluten-free Christmas cookies. Since we're talking about Christmas as the example, you could presumably have two separate pages that target two separate keywords. Number one is how to make gluten-free Christmas cookies. And number two would be gluten-free Christmas cookie recipe. I mean, both would have separate keyword search volumes that's associated with it. But if you took a step back and you looked at the content on either of those pages, they're both essentially serving the same idea, that you want to instruct somebody on how to create Christmas cookies that are gluten-free. In that particular case, we would not have keyword cannibalization, but we would have search intent cannibalization, because the piece of content is serving the same idea, teaching somebody how to make gluten-free Christmas cookies. The reason why that's bad is because Google is going to take a look at your site and say, okay, you have two separate pieces of content that could address this particular intent. Instead of directing all of their experimentation then to, one page, they're actually having to split up the traffic or impression count to two separate pages, which then decreases the amount of, or increases the amount of time that Google has to take to arrive at some level of certainty that your piece of content is actually high quality and doing a good job serving the needs of the searcher. So this is why search intent cannibalization is really bad, is because you're deviating, right? If there's only 100 impressions that Google can give to that query every month, you're deviating, you're splitting the experimentation process amongst two separate pages that are serving the same intent. And Google would then presumably take at least twice as long, if not more than that, to arrive at this idea that one page is actually better than the other page, because they're both trying to do the same thing. So I think that that's like the way that I would usually describe it. All righty. Well, it was a true pleasure having you on the chat, Georgios. Again, I learned a lot. I hope everybody here also learned a lot. We'll recap all of what Georgios had to say with slides, and the slides will come with a link out to the spreadsheet that Georgios has prepared. And thank you so much for your time, Georgios.
Thank you very much, Bernard.
All right, take care, y'all.